Welcome to the Atomic Masculinity Show with Coach Chris Hogan, coming to you from the great state of Texas. Our show, of course, is dedicated to a brotherhood of warriors, fortifying our culture with authentic masculinity. A masculinity, by the way, defined by personal responsibility, a sacred value system, and most of all, by action. We are not perpetual students, always learning and never doing. The world is full of that. People sit all day long scrolling and looking and watching videos. They are just learning. They're watching the doers. The Atomic Masculinity Brotherhood is characterized by doing, by taking action in the most important areas of a man's life. So welcome back. This is after Thanksgiving 2024 and before Christmas. And I'm hoping that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, one of the great American traditional holidays, where the idea is gratitude, which is, by the way, the number one posture of the heart. And so I love Thanksgiving, love the food for Thanksgiving, and looking forward to spending some good family time over Christmas. So today's topic is something that we would all do well to remember. This is a concept that all high achievers know. It is also a concept that people with great character employ. You know those people that you meet that are just as good as gold? You know they would never have any ill intention, any ill will, or people who just serve other people. They're great leaders through service. They're the kind of people you would want to marry your children. They're the kind of people you would want to do business with. They're the kind of people you would trust with all of your money and the keys to your house. Those kind of people keep this concept at the forefront of their mind. And high achievers keep this concept at the front of their mind. Because if you fail to keep this clear in your mind, then it's easy to run into problems, especially with a fast-paced world that we live in and all the temptations thereof. So I'm going to tell you the concept, and then we're going to talk through it, and we're going to make some application to multiple things. And here's the concept, and do not be fooled by the simple one line that it is, because it's extremely sophisticated. And here's what it is. A line blurred is a line crossed. I'm going to say that again. I want you to think about what I'm saying. A line blurred is a line crossed. Think about a man with a porn addiction. It does not start all the way on the worst hardcore porn. He crossed a line. It was blurred at some point in time. He started looking at just girls, scantily clad girls, no doubt. And then he looked at pictures where they were wearing a little less, and then a little less. The line was blurred. Think about finances. When you do not have a clear, straight budget where you're directing every single dollar where it's going, it starts to get blurry. You start to want some things and you're not sure and you're not keeping up with how much you spent. You check the account loosely, casually. I had an old saying back when I was coaching. I told my players all the time, casualness leads to casualties. And it's that way, especially in an area like finances. But it's actually that way in all areas, whether it's finances, morality, your health. I mean, why do you think America is so overweight right now? Because even those of us with good intentions keep a blurred line when it comes to what they put in their mouth. So we end up a little chubby, a little fluffy, a little overweight. The most successful people in the world keep very crisp lines in their life, because a line blurred is a line crossed. Haven't you ever heard of the old saying, it's a slippery slope? And think about that word picture. Think about an extremely steep slope with nothing to hold on to, and it's slippery. And every time you move, you actually fall a little bit. It's a slippery slope. That's what you get on when you start to blur lines. And blurring a line is devastating for an individual, and it's equally devastating in concentric circles going out from the individual for his family, for his relationships, for his job, for his finances. And I'll tell you this right now, a blurred line is bad for the neighborhood. It's bad for your county. It's bad for a society. And it will kill a civilization. I want you to think about this. When you're driving in a city near you, think about the role of curbs all over the city. You ever hit a curb while you're driving your car? I'm sure basically everybody has. What are those curbs there for? They are a clear border that tells you this is the line. This is where you cannot drive. This is the line of demarcation that separates where you may travel and where you may not travel. And it is not a blurred line. It is a clear line. You hit a curb and there's a jolt. It tells you you're leaving the approved method of travel. You're off track. It's a crisp line, a hard line that can actually bring damage to your vehicle with some exceptions. But for most cars, they wouldn't last long if you ignored curbs. So I want to ask you this question. What if you could just snap your fingers and make all the curbs in the city just flatten down into powder? It's still the same color as the pavement or the road, but it's just flat. It's just not there. What do you think would happen? Well, I can tell you right now, you pretty much know where teenage boys are going to be driving, right? As soon as they recognize, oh, I can go there, there's not an obstacle. There's nothing hindering me from traveling over there. There is no line. There is no rule. There is no guardrail. You know that the teenage boys would be the first people to see this and try it, and many would follow suit. People would be driving all over the place. When there's no curbs, it changes the dynamic of driving in a lot of places in the city. And we can't just blame teenage boys. You better watch me too, because I might just drive off across somewhere if I can speed up my commute of the day, right? So anytime you eliminate that clean, crisp line, that thing that keeps people traveling in the area they were intended to travel, when you eliminate that, you're going to have problems. There's a term I used all the time in coaching parents, and it is this. It's the term guardrails. You need to make tight guardrails for the top 4 or 5 things for your kids. If you create guardrails that are unmistakable in the mind and eyes of your kids, you can raise a kid correctly. If you do not have guardrails, or the guardrails are too loose, you're going to have serious problems because the line is easy to blur. You know, because we blur a line and then we blur the next line and then the next line, and we get more loose as time goes by blurring lines, what you do is you essentially remove the curbs and the guardrails of a society and a civilization. And you wonder why there are people who go into Walgreens and steal $990 worth of things with no repercussions. I mean, if you were to rewind the clock, even a short 15 years ago, and said, yeah, one day you'll be able to walk into the CVS or the Walgreens or Walmart or some store and grab $900 worth of stuff. And all the people standing around you, they'll just stare at you, or they may pull out a device and record you. But for the most part, they're just going to stare at you, including so-called security guards. And hey, nothing will happen to you. If you would have proposed this just a short 10, 15 years ago, not one person you spoke to would have believed you. Even the people who are now routinely stealing from multiple stores, and really not just the store owners and investors, but also all of you hard-working taxpayers. Even those people would have said, no way. Even they would not have believed that statement. And the reason why is because in the exceptional ordered history of the United States of America, nobody could imagine the crisp line that Western civilization had drawn could be that blurred. Because unlike the non-civilizations on Earth, there's always been a clear, distinct line in Western civilization. Of course, the laws of America were based on the Christian understandings of how the world operates, and those understandings were taken from the number 1 selling book in the history of the earth, the Bible. Many laws of Western civilization were taken verbatim or directly from a biblical principle. For instance, The clean, crisp line we're currently discussing was drawn in one sentence thousands of years ago. It comes from what you know as the Ten Commandments. It's commandment number 8, found in Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. It simply states, "You shall not steal." Pretty straightforward. A clean, crisp line right from the greatest moral code in history, the Ten Commandments, which of course were posted all over America's schools for well over 200 years. But you see, over time, we begin to blur the lines of morality. How is this? Well, easy. We just substituted the principles of the Christian religion with the principles of another religion, a religion called secular humanism, which of course is grounded from an atheistic philosophy. The act of walking into a store and stealing what belongs to someone else is a natural outgrowth and naturally understood action of a secular humanist worldview. Just like "you shall not steal" naturally follows the Christian idea of love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, how are you going to love your neighbor as yourself if you're stealing from them? See, it naturally follows. If I love my neighbor as myself, I will not steal their stuff that they worked for, right? But the concept that flows naturally from secular humanism is called personal moral autonomy. I decide what's right and wrong. In my life, I am the God. I am the deity. You see, in secular humanism, indeed, the individual person is the moral standard. The God, little g, who says, "I have my rights. Who are you to tell me what I can do?" And the outworking of this is a personal moral autonomy that is held as one of the highest tenets of that worldview. It's so high in the thinking of secularists that the individual's autonomy to take somebody else's property, the right they have to do that, outweighs the concept of personal property and the Ten Commandments that say, "You shall not steal." And it's natural from this worldview. It makes perfect sense. You think I'm exaggerating? All you have to do is pull up the endless videos on social media and watch people walk into stores, steal hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of stuff, and walk out while everybody stands around and nothing happens to them. By the way, if you interviewed all of the folks stealing all this stuff, if you just had an open dialogue interview and asked them if they were good people, I can guarantee you they would tell you they're basically good people. And you say, how would anybody do that and then still say, "Hey, I'm a good person even though I steal things that belong to others"? It's really easy. There is a way that human beings judge themselves, and there's a way that human beings judge others. You see, we judge others by their behavior. We judge ourselves by our intentions. Anyway, that little nugget's for free. So let me give you an example of a recently blurred line in a Western civilization. By the way, a civilization that is rapidly deteriorating, and that is the country of Great Britain. A mark of a great civilization is order, and the mark of barbarism is disorder. So last Friday in Britain, a bill is being advanced through legislation about legalizing assisted suicide. Now, we're talking about a post-Christian culture, and we're talking about a culture which is not only post-Christian, but increasingly post-conservative. The bill was brought by Kim Leadbeater, a newly elected member of Parliament, a private member's bill, and most private members' bills die before ever seeing direct action. The fact that this one received action in a matter of days tells you something. It was also a vote, a free vote, as ruled by the party leaders, which basically means that the party whips did not discipline members who would vote against the party position. So this was a true free vote, and when the vote came down, it was 330 for the bill, 275 against the bill. Now, just a bit of history here. A similar bill went down to defeat by very similar numbers back in 2015, except for the numbers were switched. So back in 2015, the large majority voted against legalizing assisted suicide. So today, we're looking at a major moral shift in Britain. But the big issue here was the moral statement made in the vote. That is the line that has been crossed. But this comes because it has been blurred for the previous 15 years in this very area. And I'm telling you, a line blurred becomes a line crossed. That is the way this world works. This is the barrier that has now been leapt over. It's the barrier between life and death. The barrier between a Christian understanding of medical ethics that would say, hey, look, doctors are not to intervene to bring about death. And in exchange for that Christian position, a post-Christian position of mere secular personal autonomy, individuals should have the right to decide when they will die. You know, initially, when you look at the bill, it's presented as though there are some protections in place, so the assisted suicides do not get to an even more morally disgusting place. Then, as you look around the world where assisted suicide has been legislated into law, those protections have given way one by one all over the globe, and they move toward assisted suicide with no limitations. You see, the reality is that the criteria are widened more and more. So that, for instance, if you go across the English Channel, look at the Netherlands, even though they were very strict initially with certain criteria and principles in place, going back a generation ago when assisted suicide was first legalized there, well, you've had one barrier fall, then another one, and then another one, and the lines begin to blur, as they always do when you tear down moral guardrails. And just to take the Netherlands, for example, today you can have young children. I want you to listen to what I'm saying here. This is unbelievable to me. You can have young children in the Netherlands making the decision to have assisted suicide. And the medical field and legal authorities in that country are complicit. That is unbelievably disgraceful. And you say, how can a country allow kids to experience kids have childhood trauma, right? We all have childhood issues. And I hate the word trauma because it's way overused. But kids have issues growing up. It's not the easiest thing in the world to be a kid, grow up, you're going to get bullied sometimes, or you're going to go through awkward moments, or you're going to have disappointments and failures, and you're going to get your little heart broke if you start dating too early. I mean, there's things that happen as a kid, right? And look at us. We all grew up and we're fine. And so think about a country where the kids have something happen to them and they get into a little stint with depression, and their government tells them, well, you have the option to let us help you commit suicide. That's where they are. And just to state the matter as clearly as possible, the Christian moral tradition, the Christian worldview simply does not allow for anything like assisted suicide. The Christian worldview reflects the fact that we believe that every single human being is made in God's image and thus possesses not only a life that is sacred because of the Creator, but a life that possesses dignity simultaneously because of the Creator. And when it comes to human dignity, particularly because we are the one creature God made in His image, that means that human life is to be respected from the moment of fertilization until natural death. But what you have in Britain is the shift of one religion to another. You don't have a shift from religion to no religion. You have a shift from one religion to another religion. And in this case, like I've said, you shift from Christianity to secular humanism. That doesn't mean, by the way, everyone in the Christian age of Great Britain was a Christian. But what it does mean is that Christianity formed the worldview, and that includes the worldview that produced the ethics and laws in Britain. But it is true now that what you have is a different religion in place, and it is the religion that worships at the altar of personal autonomy. And that comes right down to the kinds of arguments made for assisted suicide in this legislative debate. Of course, they called it assisted death because they're trying to soften what it is. But it came down in the public debate to arguments that individuals should be able to exercise their personal autonomy to make this choice. And this is where the Christian worldview comes back and says, there are certain choices that we are not meant to face. And this is at the top of that list. And by the way, we did not make the choice to be born. You see, that choice was made for us, and not just by our parents. It had to be made for us by the Creator, who gave us life, who made us in His image. But see, with the blurring of moral lines, you have a culture of death making encroachments in our post-Christian age. And it works on both ends of that spectrum, by the way. It goes at the earliest point of life, and it goes at the later stages of life. And it seeks to erode human dignity at both ends of the life spectrum. So we see that in abortion. We see that in other assaults upon unborn human life. And we see it increasingly in terms of the movement for assisted suicide. And of course, that disproportionately affects the aged. But when you think about Britain, and I've been there multiple times, you think about those towering spires, the looming cathedrals. You think about the abbeys and all the rest. I remember walking through St. Paul's Cathedral, beautiful cathedral in London. It is breathtaking. Brought tears to my eyes the first time I walked in there. You could see the reverence for God in the hands of the men who built that unbelievable cathedral. And sadly, while Britain was built on Judeo-Christian heritage and for hundreds of years was at the pinnacle of Western civilization, those great architectural structures serve only as a memory of the greatness of an empire that is now allowing the last fumes of a great heritage to drift away. It's truly sad, and it's because of blurred lines. A line blurred is a line crossed. When you decide to remove the ancient boundaries, you open yourself to all kinds of evil and disorder. There is an incredibly wise quote attributed to G.K. Chesterton. He said, "Don't ever take a fence down until you know the reason it was put up." Which essentially means you should never change or remove something without understanding why it exists in the first place. There is a reason things that are in place got to be in place. There is an experience of millions of people who lived before you and I, and a millennia of wisdom that has contributed to Western civilization and everything Western civilization has built. Therefore, we would be well served to give thoughtful consideration before making changes. In my lifetime in America, I've watched this happen numerous times. There is a fence built that is served as part of the moral foundation of the society from the beginning, and then secular humanist revolutionaries come in, and in an attempt to tear down fences they don't like nor understand, they begin blurring the moral lines because they know a line blurred is a line crossed, not only in your personal life, but in a country's life. So in their scheming, they know that if they can blur the line, it will only be a matter of time before the line is completely gone. Now, the biggest example is the current destruction of the fence, known as male and female. You see, the line started to be blurred. In the 1960s, a new wave of social activism, fueled by the civil rights movement, which was great, and other social movements, inspired a coalition of partners that teamed up and did something to blur the lines of how sexuality was viewed for thousands of years, indeed all of human history. This coalition was made up of politicians, leftist revolutionaries, lawmakers, bureaucracies in Washington, D.C., and of course, gay rights activists. They used a great strategy, and that is they co-opted the civil rights language and umbrella based on race. And they begin to use that language and that umbrella for the purpose of moving forward the agenda of quote-unquote gay rights. So basically they tried and have been tremendously successful in convincing many people and several courts of their argument that same-sex marriage, for instance, is a civil right, and it's very similar or even identical as the fight for civil rights in the 1960s. And clearly, the vast majority of people in the U.S. support civil rights for everyone, and they wanted to capture that momentum because it would do two things. Number one, if they were successful in getting into the same category as civil rights, it would silence much, if not all, opposition to their movement. Because who wants to be against civil rights? Nobody. And number two, it would move the argument from moral to legal. So when the gay rights movement began this quest in the 60s, you were not going to win the moral argument with any population in Western civilization. So they had to go the legal route. In my opinion, the gay rights movement should not have been able to co-opt the civil rights movement like they did, because they're not even close to the same. But they were hugely successful in blurring the lines. Now, what has this resulted in? Well, at first, they just wanted to say, hey, our behavior is just like skin color or ethnicity. It's immutable, and so it should be normal, which is not true. Homosexual behavior is absolutely not like a person being born with any particular skin color. Obviously, any discrimination on the basis of unchangeable characteristics, such as skin color or ethnicity, is absolutely evil and wrong. But Christians cannot accept the argument that homosexuality is an immutable characteristic. Now, we should recognize there's a complexity of issues related to sexual orientation that a very small percentage, a minuscule, in fact, percentage of people will have. But you do not make rules based on exceptions. We cannot define a behavior as an intrinsic characteristic. I mean, if you're going to provide protection on the basis of behavior, you can grant theft or other harmful behaviors the same civil rights protection. Of course we can't do that. You can't define a behavior as an intrinsic characteristic like race or ethnicity. But nonetheless, after the gay rights movement began to achieve victories under the civil rights umbrella, the push for so-called gay marriage began. In reality, there's no such thing as gay marriage, at least in God's economy, no matter what a government deems as marriage. Only one entity defines marriage, and he did. So there's no such thing as gay marriage. And again, this was couched as a right, even though it would require a definition change in words rooted in the foundation of all human civilization. Think about that. Literally, from the beginning of humanity, marriage has been understood in only one way. You see, marriage, like human rights, existed prior to the law. That's why the law can't define it. Marriage and human rights both existed prior to the law. Did you get that? Christians understand that marriage was instituted by the Creator, who designed marriage and the family as the foundational social unit of human society. Marriage unites a man and a woman in a holy covenant that should last as long as they both live. So every human society has recognized this meaning of marriage, and all successful civil societies have honored, protected, and defended heterosexual marriage as the union that should govern human sexuality, reproduction, intimacy, and the rearing of children. You see, but the moral lines were successfully being blurred, and a line blurred is a line crossed. So fast forward a few decades, and so-called same-sex marriage became legal in the United States of America on June 26, 2015, after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of what they called marriage equality in the case of Obergefell versus Hodges. So the blurring of the lines in this area served to undermine the oldest institution on earth that governed humanity, put in place by the Creator. It is a very clear line, but it was blurred by those who worship at the altar of personal moral autonomy. So what has this erosion of morality the country was built on led to? Well, today, in 2024, almost half the country believes it's okay for 13-year-old girls to chop off their breasts, that it's okay to chemically castrate confused 10-year-old boys, not based on anything true, but because these poor kids have been indoctrinated by a social contagion, not based in reality. And now, all of a sudden, we have high school-age kids proclaiming, I'm not a boy or a girl, I'm a furry. And so schools are putting litter boxes around. And this is all supported by school administrators and brain-chained adults all over the place. You see how ridiculous this is? It's because we blurred the line. You say, what line did we blur? That would be the very first chapter of the very first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. So all that to say, in your personal life, you need crisp lines to help you navigate life correctly. And you will see that when the lines are clear in your personal vision, when the lines are clear in the standards you put in place for your life, when the lines are clear for that business plan or your financial plan, when the lines are clear for your workout regimen, when the lines are clear for those relationships that you're in, you will see that you can achieve highly. But when you start blurring those lines, believe me, a line blurred is a line crossed. One of the most beautiful things in the world about having crisp lines is they create clarity, which is one of the greatest blessings for peace of mind and one of the greatest tools of achievement. I mean, I do some weddings and some marriage counseling, and I always work with a couple to get a plan of clarity in all the major areas of marriage. The new couple needs a clear, crisp line to go by when it concerns their finances, their budget, their home life, the roles each of them will play in their communication. How do we want to raise these kids? Clarity is much more valuable in these areas than consensus or agreement. It's better to disagree but be clear than to agree and not be clear on either why we agree or to have one of the individuals not being truthful and instead just electing to agree. That's a good way to build a grudge against somebody you're supposed to keep in first place in your life. So I hope the idea of a line blurred is a line crossed is a concept that helps you build clarity and conviction. My advice is to go build crisp lines in the major areas of your life, your health, your spiritual life, your moral life, your home life, your financial life, in your occupation, in your relationships. Sit down, get a notebook, get a mentor, get some accountability partners, and build crisp lines, not only in the major areas of your life, but things you may be struggling with. It's like that does it. I'm 50 pounds overweight right now. I'm drawing a line, and I'm not going to blur it by having some sugar twice a week. That blurs the line. I'm done with it. I'm going to go 3 months, 0 sugar. Or I'm going to go 2 months, 0 carbs of any kind. Or I'm going to add a workout regimen to this diet. I'm done. I'm drawing a line in the sand. Crisp lines win in life because they are definitive and they're a demarcation between a life you want and the dangerous, slippery slope that could derail your hopes and dreams and all of your goals. So I hope this concept was helpful to you. I would recommend that you go put it into action as soon as you can. I would recommend you take action because we all have areas in our life where we need to crisp up those lines to be the person we were born and designed to be. So that's where we'll end today's show. If you have any questions, shoot me an email on the tab on my website labeled Submit a Question. I may try to answer that question down the line on a future podcast. You can find that at atomicmasculinity.com.